without further ado, the episode.
Okay.
Okay.
That's cool.
We can give it 5 seconds.
1, 2.
Now I don't know how to intro it. Hello. Do I say hello again?
No, I mean
Like
you
this?
just kind of do. And today we're going to talk about
Hello. Again, thanks for checking us out. Today, as the episode title implies, we're going to be looking at a man who founded the first Black-owned shipping company, a man who served as provisional president of all of Africa, a man whom they called the Black Moses, that is, Mr. the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr.
It's weird that you say the honorable because I do. This is more like the background knowledge of like the connected to the current day stuff. You're talking about I think the first mass movement in America of Black like nationalism.
Yeah.
And from this vein is gonna flow your FOIs, NOIs, Fruit of Islam, Nation of Islams. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's and all this stuff. The same vein of like. Not exactly thought, but not exactly of kind of the thought, not exactly the structure of the organizations at all.
Yeah.
So, some people, this is a story more about inept confidence at some points.
Like, reckless amounts of confidence.
It's about
insane amounts of confidence. Yeah.
Black pride, confidence, and incompetence. All wrapped in one.
It's a fun but it's like interesting because the NAACP was also around during the time and they were like button heads at time. But I guess what distinguishes Garvey's organization is that it was international in scope, where I don't really know that much about the NAACP. So I don't want to say that it's not international in scope, but Garvey was crossing continents,
Yeah. Like Du Bois has his international flair.
I guess so
like
was Du Bois, but only at Versailles,
Yeah, he's going and doing stuff, but it's like Garvey has these incredibly grand aspirations that are at one time incredibly inspirational, but at sometimes like, whew, it's a lot.
Yeah. But we'll see how it all plays out. First phase of his life, we're going to be talking obviously about his early life. He was born August 17th, 1887, born in Kingston to his father, Marcus Garvey, and Sarah Richards. His father is like a master mason and very bookish, like always had his nose in a book. And then his mother was a domestic servant. And Garvey, as a child, his dad had all of these books around. And so Marcus Garvey would just pick up a book and read. He read a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
And some of the early events of his life, 1901 to 1910, he begins an apprenticeship as a printer, and he's working as a printer for a while, kind of moving around various spots in Jamaica. He's fired from working as a printer after organizing a strike amongst the other printers because they wanted higher wages, and they striked, and Garvey stuck with them despite the fact that he was like relatively secure in his job. And he's like working on his public speaking as well, entering public speaking competitions, but in particular working to eliminate his Jamaican accent because he wants to sound more like an Englishman when he speaks.
It's weird that you talk about a lot of the upbringings of all these people we study. A lot of them aren't like even Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey isn't like poor at all. Like in the Jamaican sense at this time, he was like a lower middle class. Like he wasn't, or just a middle class. Like, but his father acted like, they were balling, but they were relatively just middle class, but like above like a vast swath of poverty.
Yeah,
that was Jamaica.
His father got that wrapped up in that scheme. Like one of the things that tanked his finances was like he was receiving a monthly like magazine publication that he thought was free because he just knew the dude or whatever, and he thought the dude was just giving him this magazine for free.
Yeah,
and then he died, and then the new guy who took over the organization was like, "Oh, that'll be like 300 pounds or whatever," and he's like, "I'm not paying this.
money. Yeah,
I thought it was free.
No, it's his upbringing is like the privilege, like the assumed kind of privilege of like, but like Not really. Y'all don't have no money because even like Marcus Garvey's friend he would meet later was like, yeah, no, we were actually kind of rich and we didn't know them. Like we didn't know them at all.
There's the poor and the not so poor,
Yeah.
you know. So, sorry. Fall of 1810, he gets out of Jamaica for a little bit. He heads to Costa Rica, which is also a United Fruit boom company. And the Costa Ricans, I think others as well, they refer to United Fruit as El Pulpo, which means the octopus. And reason being is that it's just this massive multinational corporation with little interests and tendrils everywhere, which is why it's the octopus, you know. And he arrives.
The idea of a company town where everything you buy is through the company,
and all the stores, and they can charge whatever they want, and they just pay you in fucking coupons, man. They just pay you in Dave and Buster's coupons.
Dave and Buster's shit, and they're just like, here you go. You're like, you only can spend it at Dave and Buster's. You live
one strawberry, that'll be $50, sir. There you go.
Yeah.
And he arrives there in the middle of a strike because the Costa Rican government, they start to tax United Fruit exports, and United Fruit is basically like, okay, no big deal. We'll pay for this tax by cutting the wages of all of our laborers. And so they're naturally pissed off about that. And so they're striking, and Marcus Garvey gets there and everybody's picketing and everything. Spring of 1912, he heads over to London for a while because, you know, I'm not sure what, I think the falling out in Costa Rica was that he like started a newspaper there, and he was just like too militant, like taking too many big swings at the gentry, and even like the upper middle class was like, bro, we all know it's bullshit. You got to calm down though. But he was like very vocal about the injustice.
From my understanding, it's he starts a newspaper there. It does all right, piss people off. They kick him the fuck out. Then he goes to Panama, which is like
that's right.
Which is like the weird Wild West of the Caribbean at this time in 19 teens or whatever. With like just Jamaican, like you go there and you're like, it's almost like you went to the Wild West, and then you come back and you're like, and then he comes back from Panama, and then he goes to London. In like Panama, he didn't really do it. Like I'm not too clear what happened in Panama, but after he comes off of Panama, he's not looking to like go to Europe to like make himself better and smarter or whatever he thinks is going to be in the UK.
Yeah, or like to further his informal education.
True. Yeah.
So spring 1912, he arrives in London, and he's working at the dockyards for a little bit. But while working there, he hears about possible employ at this paper called the African Times and Orient Review, run by this Egyptian man, Duse Muhammad Ali. And, you know, Duse kind of, I hope I'm saying that right. I don't think it's Deuce or Duse, probably Duse.
I
Muhammad
do not
Ali.
know. Do not look at me.
I don't.
There's some evidence, like, I thought they were like that he was like, was he like Egyptian or African? Because they said in the book he was like known for like he like didn't speak like African languages or Egyptian languages.
Yeah,
he didn't like, and they like he was the actor who was known for like doing like kind of blackface in the time, like putting cork on himself. So like, was he, how African or Egyptian was he? I don't want to doubt the man's ethnicity,
for debate.
There was some little sketchiness around that.
Little sketchiness, you know. So he's writing articles. Garvey is writing articles in the African Times and Orient Review. He's making connections and building his name. July 7th of 1914. You know, he pops around Europe for a little bit, but you know, he's like basically broke, and he heads back to Jamaica.
That interesting story about him marrying the heiress,
Spanish Irish princess.
Like apparently, like if you were black in Europe at this time, everybody just thought you were a prince. So
nice.
So like you can just go around, everybody be like, yeah, no, I'm a prince, and they just treat you like royalty, and you get into these weird circles because they just assume that any black person who has mobility like this, oh my god,
you end up at a eyes wide shut type orgy just based on people's misconceptions.
Basically in Vienna in right before the war.
Everybody's got the masks on and everything. Yep.
Why Duce and all that African Orient Times and Orient Times? Let me go back to the name of this. Why Duce in the African Times and Orient Review is important because he's like the first person who kind of gives them this like increasingly like idea of like black Black pride, even though Ducey's ideology is like weirdly tied in with like aristocracy in like England and like, but
well, he's
like
also about like
promoting
Egyptian
blackness.
home rule and everything.
Yeah. So like he was all about I think that's where like this is like the place where he like and in London he learns about all the like he gets a lot of knowledge about African empires and Africanness, and then he takes that back to Jamaica.
Where he forms on July 7th of 14 the UNIA. Their goal was to quote unquote establish a brotherhood among the black race to promote a spirit of race pride, to reclaim the fallen and assist in the civilizing of the backward tribes of Africa. And the point of the movement, I guess, or one of the things that differentiates it is that it is international in its scope and international in its ambitions. And it's initially not received well in Jamaica because Jamaica still, or a lot of people in Jamaica still adhered to the color hierarchy, where if you were lighter skinned, you could get better jobs and everything. And of course, they're benefiting from this system. And so they don't want to associate under the common banner of black.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, that still happens, and I feel like Jamaica still has a weird color thing. I think about bleaching skin. That's a whole different topic. Let's keep going.
Okay. I haven't heard it about.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
So while in Jamaica, he goes to a banquet there honoring W.E.B. Du Bois because he comes to visit and he's fêted there, and Garvey attends, and he doesn't really meet Du Bois because Du Bois is like the biggest name out right now, but this is what will become his biggest rival, and he's trying to build up UNIA and doesn't really take hold. 1916. He gets his own place in Harlem. He spends, he's in the United States now. He spends 6 months on the road touring the Jim Crow South, visits Tuskegee, the Tuskegee Institute, and he sees sharecropping and like the cotton industry in practice and how impoverished a lot of black laborers are. And another point, but not every black person from the South, not everyone's doing poorly. The book mentioned go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah. No, I mean, the going to Tuskegee is like he goes to Tuskegee and he gets fucking blown off by Booker T. Washington's heir to the throne, and he like doesn't take it. He's like kind of like, fuck you, dude. I came all the way here, and I've been telling you I want to do this in Jamaica. I want to do Tuskegee Institute, like Tuskegee in Jamaica, and you're just like, fuck me. You don't even say it. You basically just blow me up. Fuck you.
Yeah. 1917, he gets his start building up UNIA, or gets building up a name for himself because he hasn't reincorporated it yet. 1917, he starts speaking at a stepladder at the main avenue in Harlem. It's 135th Street and Lenox Avenue, which this was a fairly, I think, common thing for the time, where you would just get a stepladder, set it against a building, and that was your soapbox, and you would just start talking about whatever you wanted to talk about, man. You would just let it all out,
But here, this thing is like particularly special because this is Harlem, and this is like the speaker's circle, which is like, it's like the street school for public speaking in like the biggest, like the black center of the world. Like it's how you learn how to public, and it's all these different styles of public speaking that have been made famous by. It's like it's a a lot of people talking about a lot of good things, a lot of crazy things, a lot of shit.
Just a Berkey and parlor, just ideas being tossed around. Everybody's talking, man.
It's the shit from Jamaica that he had been doing, and it was brought to like this big ass stage in Harlem in the center of the Black universe.
Well, and like a huge benefit that he has is that, or like one of the things that draws people to him is not only his ideas, but his speaking style, because it's very eclectic and it's almost an embodiment of his movement as it were. Because his speaking style, he's, born in Jamaica, went to England, and then also during the tour of the South, he like saw a bunch of like black preachers speak and incorporated all of those different influences into his unique speaking style, which resonated with the people. It was international. Like the way he speaks is international, you know what I mean? And so it kind of mirrors the movement. And he's also able to speak to the plight of black people internationally because he's done more traveling, I guess, than than some of the other guys who are on the ladder.
He does this thing where he fucking, it's like, if I thought about if I saw it and like, I was like, what I would think. And it was like, if I'm black and I'm like, I've migrated from like, I'm African-American, I've migrated from like Georgia or wherever. Mm-hmm. And like, then I see this dude who with an accent that I may not know about, with this English accent combined, talking about African empires.
Yeah.
It seems
and
like
United fruit abuses in Central America.
Yeah, that seems like some shit where I'm like, oh, that's some different shit. That's like a different reality, and I would like to get in tune with that different reality.
Mm-hmm. So 1917, he reincorporates UNIA on U.S. soil in May. Of course, the same year, 1917, June 2nd, President Woodrow Wilson, commits to World War I, commits the United States to World War I to, quote unquote, make the world safe for democracy. And then, of course, famously, you've got the 369th Battalion, which is praised by the French as the Harlem Hellfighters, and all black unit from Harlem.
It's a one. I just said in my previous rant before, I just said if I was black if I was black from Georgia, I was like, no, I am black. I just want to say that. And then second, like I love Felipe Randolph's quote about like Woodrow Wilson saying we're gonna make the world safe for democracy, and like A. Philip Randolph is like, yeah, I just want to make Georgia safe for the Negro. That's all I want. That's all I want.
Like you're very international in your intent to make the world safe for democracy. That's predicated on the assumption that America is safe for democracy. And
I don't think the world wants this type of democracy. This is kind of a crazy place.
Yeah, it's a little, it's weird.
The 369th is like the best. Like it's an interesting ass. Like if we should maybe do an episode on them later. Maybe another, maybe next like or later in the year. It's a black unit that they don't even get American helmets. They give them French helmets because it's a whole thing about how the French thought that the Americans would just reinforce French units, and they were like, "No, nigga, we don't trust y'all." So we'll give you our black people because we don't, cause they don't give a fuck because they're racist people.
We don't need them, you know what I mean? You can have them, but
so they give them the 369th and the 369th.
Also, can they use your helmets? Is that cool?
They don't even give them American helmets. They get French helmets, and like they're at Verdun and they're like awarded like unit ribbons and unit crosses and like medals for bravery all over, and it's like they're a great unit. And then and then all of the also the Harlem Hellfighters their band is like the band that brings jazz to Europe.
I didn't know. Because I knew about the link, but I didn't know they were specifically the conduit to
all black people at this time are kind of bringing jazz, but like their band is from New York. They are like the people in the band like will become like jazz Harlem Renaissance people, and they bring that to like to
That's
Europe.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Garvey, he's very critical of the reports about World War I, and particularly the treatment of the Harlem Hellfighters and other black soldiers, and that they were put on, or what he's seeing and what he's speaking out against is that they're put on like more dangerous missions, and that like segregation extended even to the trenches, which is fucked up.
You want me to read the quote?
Yeah.
In August, he was like, for every Negro lynched by whites in the South, Negroes should lynch a white in the North, which is a position he backs off of in his later years.
Yeah. That's
what is hype? Didn't he get his hype? I don't, and we'll get into that later. Why he like kind of died it down.
That quote was in response, or maybe not, because it was all kind of like a culmination. It was all around the same time, because of course, you got World War I going on, and he's seeing the mistreatment of black soldiers over there. And then domestically in America, July 2nd, you've got the worst race riot in decades in East St. Louis. Like long-standing racial tensions violently flare up, and the National Guard basically stands by and watches as white people just fucking like riot, worse than riot. They like kill as many black people as they can, and like there's guns in the street. It's borderline anarchy, but with a racial dimension.
It's just a massacre. It's like
just a massacre.
They
and the National Guard is like, oh, our hands are tied.
It was just it was like it's like impetus for like just a capitalist like a black people for coming from the South. They were like working at a factory that white people were only supposed to work at, and then they were hiring black people, and then they basically just destroyed East St. Louis. And it's like just a lot of stories of complete horror, dudes fucking lynching black people and picking them up with by the holes in their head that they just shot them.
And like horrific stories of white people like taking souvenirs, like cutting off a finger of lynched black people and putting it in a jar and
that's the
that
thing.
jar on the mantle next to the picture of their children.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, whoa, we whitewashed lynching. Like I don't know when it's that, but we whitewashed lynching. A lot of us think that lynching is just you get lynched, you get hung, and then you die. Like, I'm dead. And then, and then they leave your body there, and then like I don't know what we think from there. But no, lynching as a practice in this time meant they took you, then they cut your dick off, probably, and then once they cut your dick off, they may cut other parts of you off, and then from there they then strung you up. You don't die when you get strung up in that way. They would just pick you up that way. You're choking to death. Then they light you on fire and then burn while you're burning and you're smoldering. Then they take photos of your burnt corpse, and then they cut your corpse into pieces, and they take those pieces home for souvenirs. That's the fact of lynching.
It's not just like, oh, he was killed. Like it was mutilated and then killed, and then mutilated some more, and then photographed and then framed. And
look at those lynching postcards.
They're horrible.
They are. It's I love to make my white friends hurt. Those lynching postcards, which is like a whole smiling white community from 1919, 1920s, just smiling in front of a burnt black body. So,
it's fucked up.
Yeah.
In response to all of this, WEB Dubois and the NAACP, they lead a silent protest march asking Mr. President, why not make America safe for democracy? And then Garvey's response is a little more hardcore. He gives that quote that Josh read earlier, basically calling for black people to lynch white people in proportionate numbers.
It's a black militancy, and like those two sides of the coin are constantly recurring in terms of like black people. And I feel like I'm not a fucking sociologist. Like you see it today. You see it today. Maybe people go get guns, or they like want to march. You see it in they do both. I don't know. You see it more in the 60s with Martin Luther King Jr. And then you see Malcolm X. You see the NAACP more kind of, and then you see like the Black Panther wing, and you see it now and see it in this time with the Du Bois and Garvey. And then I just think it's the same thing that's kind of always when you talk about African American people, a lot of things you can trace to slavery. It's the same thing as like house slave, field slave. The people in the field going to be much more radical, much more harsh, because they're dealing with much more harsh conditions. They're the field people who are trying to make their change or whatever through kind of swaying the master's feelings. And so that, I just think it's two kind of ways of doing things,
of going about it. I didn't think about that long-standing parallel.
It's always the back of my mind, baby. It's too constantly.
This quote, that Josh said, it attracts the attention of the Bureau of Investigation, the BOI, which is an FBI branch whose ranks included a young man by the name of J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, always around.
Always in the back of all this shit. Talk about El Pulpo. Right? FBI. And their biggest concern right now, what they're thinking is that, or what they claim to be thinking, because they might just be trying to implicate any sort of like black nationalist movement under a common umbrella and demonize it through whatever way they can. They thought, supposedly, that German spies had infiltrated NYC's black community, as well as communists and socialists, and that they were they've got a common enemy, and that enemy is the United States and the Grand Republic, and we gotta crack the fuck down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So either way, this gets us into the second stage of Garvey's life when he is now on the radar. He's established the movement. He's on the radar within America for both like the black public and also the feds, right?
Yeah.
So 1918, UNIA's ranks are swelling, and this is when he starts to launch UNIA's first business ventures, which is a newspaper called
the Negro World.
Okay.
The Negro World.
Yeah, and it's circulation. He wants it to be the biggest newspaper around. I think the circulation that same year hits around 10,000, which is pretty good. And Claude McKay is like a regular contributor to the publication, so he's able to bring some people bring some subscribers in. And then shortly after that, you have the Red Summer of 1919, which is a shit show. It's fucked up. Like
the fire. It's just incredible racial violence. Like racial violence on a level that like I don't think we can comprehend now. I mean, maybe like last summer was bad. 2020 summer was bad.
Yeah.
But that wasn't at all like there's a lot of protesting. There was a lot of like destruction of property. Like, oh yeah, people were like, yeah, it was crazy. Nah, 1919 was like it was too much. It was like white people lost like I don't know what happened. It was fucked up. I'm gonna put it that way.
It was fucked. There were 20 different race riots in various cities across America. One of the worst in East Chicago, where like weeks of violence left 50 people killed and 100 plus people injured, and just an unfathomable, borderline unfathomable amount of violence, because America is a very, very violent place. Most history is very violent, but also like.
And you had like this weird, not weird in the whole context of American history, but like just a incredible amount of lynchings in 1919. Just an incredible amount of lynchings of particularly black servicemen coming home from World War I, which is crazy. Which is, I mean, they're like, oh, you think you're somebody now. Like that's basically what it was. It's like, oh, you think you can do things because you over there in Europe. Fucking French women, not here, and that's it.
Not
was just,
here. I mean, way to support the troops.
No, they don't. They especially. You talk about World War I. Is deeper, a lot of weird, like deeper shit about World War I. Is that like all those draft boards in these rural towns were particularly they like picked African Americans to go to World War I. It was like a crazy high number of black troops that were drafted into the army during World War I. Just because they let them die first.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh wait, well we gave them all guns and training. And then they were like, nah, you get like when you come back, we're gonna if you just stuck up.
We didn't think about what happened if we didn't count on them surviving. And this is now a problem that we
that's basically what it was. And then they came back like, oh, okay, we got to put them in line again. And that's what 1919 was.
Woodrow Wilson, he was afraid of the return of black soldiers for another reason, or like adding a dimension to it. He was afraid that they would be, quote, the greatest medium in conveying Bolshevism to America. So they brought jazz to France, and they're going to bring back Bolshevism to America, right? This is globalization, right?
I mean, not that. I mean, like if you look at the French Army,
I don't actually believe that. I was being facetious.
No, I mean, if you look at the French Army during World War I, dog, especially if you keep like, I mean, the 369th, they put French people, like they put the French Army, put them in the French Army. Yeah, the French Army was like a hot spot for Bolshevism.
Bunch of commies.
Yeah, for becoming, it was like a hot spot for the French Army went on strike during the war.
Damn.
They just decided not to fight. It's you took that and those factory workers they had in France.
That also makes factory workers are probably also going to be soldiers, because the rich kids are probably not going to serve in this. Yeah, you know?
What I mean, at that, would you get like,
or at least there are more factory workers than there are like scions.
Once you get deep in World War I, Doug, in France, everybody's gone. Everybody's just gone.
France socialism there's a long history there, all
There's
the
a
way up
lot.
to
I
like
mean, that's where
De
Karl
Gaulle.
Marx wrote the
Yeah,
shit at. I mean, he's
yeah.
German, but I think he wrote it in Paris.
Hmm.
So Paris is like, yeah, there's a lot of communism.
And as far as like Garvey's movement and UNIA and stuff and their relationship to Bolshevism
Yeah.
is Garvey and UNIA, they're not anti-Bolshevik.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interpreted by the feds as being pro-Bolshevik. And so BOI agents start to infiltrate UNIA's ranks. And as far as like whether or not they were or were not socialists or communists or Bolsheviks or whatever,
Yeah.
they weren't in like a strict sense. UNIA, they had an ice cream parlor, a tea room, a laundromat, and a restaurant. And Garvey himself thought that true emancipation would come from
Mm-hmm.
economic independence. And so he's like, basically pulling up the black brace by its collective bootstraps, which is venture capitalism.
Yeah, it's just like it's weird. It's like a collective like type of form of capitalism. It is. They get that rap mostly just because like they got some communist or socialist higher ups in like socialist thought, like for black people at the time. You got like Hubert Harrison and that, and
I
then
think
you
A.
had
Philip Randolph too.
A. Philip Randolph like matched. I think he like became like an enemy later or I don't know. Then that Bruce Grit guy, from my understanding, was like had some socialists, and then the dude that was like Marcus Garvey's like homeboy, who like Marcus Garvey kind of tossed to the side.
Wilfred Domingo.
Wilfred Domingo was like a socialist believer. He has my favorite. What the our author said about him is like how it's like some like he was like yo, he's a socialist, he's a believer in socialism, but he is not a practicer.
Yeah. There was a different black intellectual. I don't remember what his name was, but he said that there was the difference between like a forced radical and a genuine radical.
Yeah.
And that like
the black people were forced radicals. And like somebody says like black people were forced radicals. I don't know. That's part. So. I remember like rather than like they were radicals because of their race, not because of their actual lives, some economic conditions. But I thought about that for a while. And I was like, I don't know about that. Some about that. I don't know enough to investigate that thought.
Yeah, we can touch more on it next week when we talk Angela Davis.
Angela Davis.
Woohoo! So another thing, a big undertaking that he has, probably what epitomizes Garvey's entrepreneurial spirit, is in 1919 he starts building up the Black Star Line, which is the first black-owned commercial shipping company, and he raises the money by selling bonds internationally. And some people, they believe in UNIA and they believe in Garvey so much that they buy the bonds with no intent of ever cashing them in. They just want to chip in and help support his dream.
It's not technically his dream of the organization of a black African empire and all that type of stuff, and like black what he called scattered Ethiopia coming together and like using their power and their resources to kind of improve the great and to bring about the greatness of black people for I don't know, capital wise, I don't know, but like he's not it's his like that's the dream. So like they're kind of funding that. They're giving money to that idea. It's not like people later it becomes more about Garvey, like specifically. But in this time, like people are buying when they see the SS Yarmouth, which is what the first ship they buy, they're saying like, oh, this is a black vessel. This is black. They're buying into black people. They're buying stock in black people, basically.
Yeah. I think the quote is that Garvey sold the black man to himself.
Yeah. Yeah. He was sold this greatness to him. So it's like it's black empowerment. It's like it's the zenith. I don't know if that's the right word of where black power comes from. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That idea as a mass.
So one of the things that kind of undermines the Black Star Line, and it's a direct play on the White Star Line, which famously is the shipping company whose ranks included the Titanic, is that there are internal squabbles with the prominent members over like financial transparency and record keeping, and Garvey's having to sue other prominent UNIA figures who were embezzling funds raised from selling the bonds, while also being sued himself for non-payment of wages, because UNIA has all of these all of these businesses under its umbrella, but he can't really afford to pay anybody. And so they're kind of suing him for non-payment. It's not that he expected him to do it for free. There were just like a lot of IOUs and everything, which I get it. I feel like I would be the same.
From what I've read, it was like he kind of expected him to do it for free because like that's supposed to kind of put in for the mission.
You're doing it for the people. You're doing it for the movement.
You're doing it for the movement. But then like also like if like starting a shipping line requires you to like, you're going to be in the hole. Like if you don't have the capital to do that, you're going to be in the hole for years. And it just feels like he was just like, we're going to start a shipping line. Wait, is anybody sailing on the shipping line? Not yet. It's like, wait, how long are they not going to be?
But we got to think about the logistics of this. Like we gotta get a whole board of directors and everything. It's like, no man, we're just gonna do it.
Yeah, we're just
gonna figure it out along the way.
That is not good. Like, that is not good. Like
I appreciate the sentiment of like, no, you just gotta manifest the shipping line, but also because you gotta plan. You gotta at least have like a record, of the money coming in, so if people are stealing it or whatnot,
I mean, because he manifested. He was a
lower middle class. He did manifest the shipping line.
He was a lower middle class Black dude from like rural, like he was more rural Jamaica, and then he moved his way from rural Jamaica all the way to now being at the head of an international African organization based on the greatness
of the financial capital of the U.S. and then the world,
and then also specifically even more in the Black African capital of the world at the time, Harlem. And he's just sitting there. He's like, "Well, did it? Let's do the next thing." And he was like, "That next thing is like now you're fucking. You gotta have a ship, and you gotta be able. The ship has to. It's a lot. Yeah, we'll get into it."
Yeah, and so he is getting a lot of flack from the press and from other prominent Black people in the community, and he's comparing all the hate that he's getting to crabs in a barrel, and like basically compares the Black community to crabs in a barrel. They're always like pulling each other down when one begins to climb, which I've heard that before, but I didn't know that Garvey was the guy who coined it.
I don't think
he was.
I don't think it was the guy who coined it. I think it was. That's an around thing. But yeah, I mean, it's not really up to like hate. That's not why they don't like him, just because they hate him.
That's fair. Maybe that's not the right word. It's at least like questioning or doubt or like, yo, you gotta think logistics.
No, they don't think there's it's people are seeing it differently. You have a WEB Dubois and NAACP who's like seeing integration as the way, and seeing and also there's just people who just don't trust Marcus Garvey. They don't know who the fuck this dude is, and is that like colorism a little bit where they don't see this dark Black dude and they're like, I don't trust that. Yeah, no, some of these people are fucking racist within their own race. They're colorist or shit. Yeah, there's that going on. Then there's just motherfuckers who like, I'm trying to make a money off this and I don't fuck with you. Like there's like 8 different, everybody has a reason, but the WB boy shit is about like, oh, I'm kind of promoting a different way of integration in the white society rather than rather than just like a more Black nationalist kind of thought.
Yeah,
from my understanding. Yeah.
So January 17th of 1920, the SS Yarmouth agrees to take. So he finally does launch the ship. It's the SS Yarmouth, and this is what realizes the Black Star Line, and that ship agrees to take $5 million worth of spirits from America, which is the day after Prohibition went into effect, which is why whoever hired them to do this work wanted the goods off of American soil so it wouldn't get impressed. And they don't write in a self-indemnity clause. So in which case, like, the fault would be limitless should anything go wrong. Yeah. And it, like, the SS Yarmouth just clears port with the cargo before the deadline and gets caught in a storm, and it needed repairs to begin with. And so it has to throw over the cargo, and now they're in big trouble because they're liable for all this lost goods. And
the captain who was trying to like, did they hired like the dude
Cockburn?
Yeah, Captain Cockburn, the Black captain, was just like, Doc, I was gonna get you this deal for way more money, and like actual, like after everything signed the right way, and you just fucked yourself. This is what we're talking about. Like there was some like hardcore, and Garvey like did this. Like he did this almost himself, from my understanding of in the book.
It was like him and one other dude that
Yeah.
negotiated the contract.
And this is what I'm talking
for
about.
11,000, I believe.
That's incompetence. Like
yeah.
that is incompetence.
Cockburn was like, bro, I was gonna get 100,000 for this, and you said 11,000, and they said done.
Yeah.
And so Garvey, and then the Yarmouth still continues on its journey. It goes to Jamaica, it goes to Costa Rica, it goes to Panama. He's trying to show it off everywhere, you know. And then like it's driving. He contacts Cockburn somehow, and he's like, I want you to go to Boston as well, even though Boston is more north than New York. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just I should go home. I don't want to go to Boston, you know. But there are all these UNIA branches and everything, and he wants to be like, no, the ship exists, the Black Star Line exists, you know?
Yeah. It's also that the ship is having like all these issues. All the ships have issues. All the ships they're buying, they're always buying them for way too fucking much for what they should work. How much worth they want and how much they should be able to get them from. And then also the racism of like just white people on ships. Like, I'm gonna screw these black people Like, I'm gonna make this super difficult. But
Spring of 1920, UNIA is in negotiations for 2 other ships. And then as far as his private life is concerned, Garvey is living with Amy Ashwood, who is his wife. And he knew her from Jamaica. He's also living with Amy Jacques, which is Amy Ashwood's friend / bridesmaid / semi-protege within the organization. And Ashwood complains that Garvey is paying more attention to Jacques than herself, and Amy Ashwood may have had an affair with somebody else, and Garvey just like, he hears about that and he just wouldn't speak to his wife for weeks at a time, and then Garvey seeks an annulment after 3 months into the marriage.
It's super important, Amy Ashwood, because she's like the fire in the actual like office to make shit like go. And without her, you know, that office isn't as lively, and in a place where like it doesn't seem to like at least the shipping line isn't ran that well. You kind of need these offices to kind of be pumping, and now they're not pumping. I don't want to say that's the beginning of the downfall, but
because she leaves the organization, and you know, she was an organizer and also just like a pillar of the movement, and she could draw people to it, and she was like strong in her own regards. And then now that she's gone, there's
the hole there.
So August 1st of 1920, there is the first international conference of Black people of the world held at Liberty Hall, and it is presided over by Marcus Garvey, where he names himself provisional president of Africa. He's meeting with other like prominent African politicians, including one Gabriel Johnson, who is the mayor of Monrovia, Liberia. And he's got connections, I think, to the president of Gabriel Johnson has connections to the president of Liberia. So this is a connection that Garvey intentionally fosters. Speaking at Madison Square Garden during the month of August, because the conference lasts for the entire month, he announces that the time has come, quote, the time has come for 400 million people to claim Africa as their native land. And this is kind of the start of the I guess of his whole thing.
His whole thing is like of the like back to Africa part of his vibe. Which is, you know, like it's, I think the book plays it off as like being naive, because it kind of be like, oh yeah, we're all gonna go back to Africa and we're gonna live in peace forever, not really talking about like how Africa is. Africa has its own tribal dynamics and its own oppressors and people being oppressed, and like it's a much more complicated place than just like, hey, we're all Black, it's gonna be all right. It's much more complicated. But I mean, at this time, you just went through the summer of 1919. Fuck America. Like, honestly,
I mean, he's basically thinking like America's always going to be a white supremacist nation. So
it's gonna be,
maybe we do better there.
Has he been wrong though? Like, I don't think. I don't like.
There's like from the way I understand it, of like there's the Du Bois approach, which is like we're gonna integrate, and we're gonna make it work, and then Garvey's like, we're fucking out.
Yeah, like, so we're out, G. Like, it's cool. Like, like later he starts getting more reckless with that, and that's like part of his downfall.
Yeah,
the part of that, we're out, G. Like, like that part of the like, fuck it. Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Early 1921, this is when Garvey proposes the resettlement of Liberia. And there have been multiple schemes to resettle Liberia, like throughout American history. And he wants to use it as a foothold, basically, to launch UNIA throughout the continent. And so he sends like a scouting mission over there that doesn't really give that favorable report, because it's like, hey, government's kind of corrupt, and the land is not great, and the infrastructure is almost non-existent. So I don't really know if this is the move.
That's the whole. I again, this would be something I would like to look into and like read about more, is the Liberia, because you have American blacks in the 1800s go and resettle in Liberia, and then they oppress the tribe, like the indigenous Africans, and that's a dynamic that you see all the way up until the Liberian Civil War in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think.
Oh damn.
And there's the descendants of the African Americans that went back, and they're in power, and they have this connection to America, and and it's like, that's part of the dynamic. And it's fucked.
It emerges as its own separate like ruling class, oppressed class thing. But
and it's like the book talks about fucking how they just went back, and like in a weird way they had just like imported like the same like kind of almost fucked up shit. Like they're like, now we're gonna just impress these indigenous people. Like, oh, you don't need to. No man of status carries a bag in Monrovia, kind of implying that like. That these people carried it for you. It's like, wait, like what?
Like, what? It's,
it's like, but that's Preston. Fred Hampton talked about it, Doug. Well, let's not dive. That's not what we're talking about today.
So June 1st, shortly after the expedition gives his report back to Garvey, June 1st, 1921, race riots erupt all over Oklahoma. This is the famous Tulsa massacre that occurs. And it was like a statewide thing too, to where I think in the book it mentioned that like basically all the black people were ordered out of Oklahoma. And we talked about it a little bit with the Bass Reeves episode, to where it was like a prong of the Great Migration.
I know.
To go to and there was like a fairly large black population within Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden it's like,
no. I don't know if it was a prong. Like I don't not prong, but I don't know if it was like they all kicked them out. I'm not sure about that. But I am sure niggas had to evacuate Tulsa. You people had to go. And it was like people living in it was like a refugee camp. Like from my understanding of the book talking about refugee. Look, man, the Tulsa massacre, Tulsa race riot, they called it back then. The Tulsa, we talked about this on our chat thing, but about how like there's like this group called the ABB that's like an offshoot of the UNIA kind of, or like kind of a similar group that's like a self-defense group made up of World War I soldiers. That's like a kind of precursor to the Black Panthers, and how like there was a part of the Tulsa massacre that was a massacre where black people were just burned in their homes and shot in the middle of the street. And this is a part of the Tulsa massacre that features like black people in sniping positions. Take it off, but I don't know that much. That's what the articles I looked up about it said. So I could be wrong about that. This is all kind of more needs to be researched more on my part.
Because the Tulsa race riot, Tulsa massacre only recently got on like just everywhere, my radar for sure. I just saw some shit being shared about it to where there was like renewed interest in it, and then
it was around. It was, people knew about it. It's just like one of those things like every year in February somebody will learn, nigga, black people invented peanut butter. Like they'll do like every like every
3D
year.
glasses.
The stop sign, let's stop light. Like they'll just like every year motherfuckers pop out like, oh, word, like y'all are valuable. Like that's
early 1922. This is kind of the beginning of the end, I guess. Garvey's facing multiple lawsuits on a number of fronts, primarily over the non-payment of wages, and the Black Star Line is beginning to falter. He's getting bad press from a bunch of former members. And then June 25th, 1922, Garvey marches into the offices of the KKK in or around or outside Atlanta, and he talks to the Grand Wizard, and they agree. They agree in that they both kind of think that maybe Black people should go back to Africa. And this is like I guess, presents it. This is what the book is saying, is that he presents it as a victory, and that like a coup, that he's like owned the KKK, I guess. But it seems more like it's portrayed by other wings or other people in the press as like a massive misstep, and that why would you have a conciliatory attitude to this hateful or this hate group that has lynched so many of our people,
I think it was he also, like, if I'm not mistaken, read the book, he was like, he invited the Grand Wizard to speak at like the next convention. Like, I don't know if I'm pretty sure I read that in the book. There's like something
I
that might have been
remember that,
or that might have probably
might be there. I don't know.
I mean I could be misspeaking, but like in general, that was like a massive mistake, because it was just like no, like we were like doing this at the source of Black pride, like this is about black pride, although it is not as big of a takedown as you would think it would be. Like, it doesn't actually destroy the movement, but it seriously handicaps it. And so like the first time everybody's like, and also like it's also like a testament to his fucking confidence. Like, I'm gonna go fix this problem. What? like, wait, you're gonna go fix the cake? You're gonna fix the problem? You're gonna go fix the problem that the KKK
Grand Wizard and has with Black people, their entire hateful ideology.
Yeah, you're just gonna come to agreement. The thing is, we didn't talk with the KKK enough.
That's what they needed. We didn't try to reach out across the aisle to the KKK.
That's the issue, and that's the problem. That's how Black people saw it. They're like, oh, that's the problem.
There's just not enough discourse about the real issues. You know what I mean?
He did while I had a rope around my fucking neck. I mean,
I didn't dead bodies or anything. That's not a problem. It's
while my cousin was getting lynched and lit on fire. This problem was that he did not say, "Hey, why can't we all agree?" Exactly. And the people are like, this is kind of the first like major chip in his armor per se.
I mean, the KKK guys, they just didn't read the same Twitter thread that I read. You know, if they would have, then
they don't get. If we get on Facebook and we really just have a dialogue on this Facebook about 70 comments, we will come to an agreement. Anything that I know as a person in this era is that if you just talk to people on Facebook 5 hours, in about 107 comments, you guys will come to an agreement. You guys will see that's the way it's gonna work. That's the way,
And whoever gets the most likes on their comments wins the debate, and that is a little thing called democracy.
No, people who
that's how it works.
That's how you convince somebody who does not see George Floyd as a person. That's how you convince them of that, through 107 Facebook comments in a thread. That's all it takes. And I'm going to tell you, as somebody who lived through this era, that does not work ever.
You cannot reach these people. You can't reach these people.
You cannot reach. We can look. We can throw enough information at it, but like, I'm not about to sit here and argue with the KKK.
I heard this quote: "It's not about communication; it's about comprehension."
Yeah, look, I'll communicate with them. I will try to reach, but like, I'm not about to sit here and argue with the KKK.
Some nuts can't be cracked, you know.
Some people too lost. Get the ones who can.
Exactly. You got to get people on the fence.
Yeah.
January of 1923, this is Garvey's scheduled trial over mail fraud because he had been using the U.S. mail to sell tickets for a UNIA lottery. That way they can raise money for their organizations.
Even though it was for the ship, from my understanding.
I think so, yeah.
It's for the ship. And here's the thing. They're trying to say, hey, that he was selling something that he knew would not be worth anything. And if you read the book, he thinks it's going to be worth something. Yeah. But it ends up just not worth anything. They just never got their shit together. It's a little bit complicated, but it's like, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting.
Well, it's another moment where it's just like, we're just gonna sell tickets in the U.S. mail. That's how But there's a whole we might be like violating laws. We gotta establish this. You know, do it, and then they do it. And
it was reasonably legal if it worked out. If it did not work out, then there's I think that's where then there's a case if it was never gonna. But if it worked out, the FBI
was also just kind of looking to pin something on him. Like they had tried to get him on a bunch of stuff.
The FBI tried to.
This is the one that stuck.
The FBI had informants all throughout his organizations. The FBI also tried to. They thought about getting them on there when we took Amy Jocks, his secretary, across state lines to New Jersey or some shit.
Yeah,
we can get them then, but they kind of wavered on it. It was for transporting women across state lines for impure purposes, which is the same thing they got Jack Johnson on.
And another thing with the lottery is that the guy who was assisting the prosecution, there's a key witness for the prosecution. Yeah. Garvey what I'll say is that guy just turns up dead. He just gets shot in the street. And then Garvey calls for a defense fund to be established for the two guys who were I think they were UNIA guys as well.
There's a lot of this is around the time when the Garvey's kind of fucking forming a little bit of a secret police kind of organization within the UNIA.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and then also Garvey's doing this thing. I don't know. Garvey's doing this thing where he's like, I'm gonna represent myself.
Yeah.
What?
It's not usually a good move.
No, that's. What's the saying in the book which I've heard
before? He who has himself for a client is
he who represents himself as a client has a client for a fool. Yes. Who has a client as a fool or some shit like that.
Yes. I was just gonna say is fucked, but
you're fucked, dude. Dude, you're really stupid if you think this is gonna work out, G.
He who represents himself has a fool for a client.
Yeah, the fool for a client.
I think that's it.
The judge is sitting there just was very was sitting there just I am not running a legal school here. I'm not running a law school. I can't tell you everything. It was a shit show. I read some of the abstracts. What are you? Come on,
yeah.
It's that confidence. That's the same confidence. The confidence it takes to represent yourself in court, to be your own lawyer, is the same confidence it takes to walk into the KK's office and think we just need to have a conversation. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. That's the same.
Yeah. So this is when the Garvey must go movement increases its furor. Fervor. Yeah, it's louder than it was.
Yeah.
September of 1923, Amy Jacques, which is now his wife, he raises enough money to pay his bail, and Garvey appeals his case. Yeah. While it's working its way through the bureaucracy, he goes on a speaking tour, and he still thought that maybe black people would be better off just going at it in Africa because America is always going to be, in his mind, and maybe truthfully, a white supremacist nation, you know. And he's like, maybe we should just jump ship.
Yeah.
So June 1924, Garvey sends another delegation to Liberia. It's scientists and agriculturalists and all this sorts of stuff to work out the details. But then July 10th of 1924, there's a press release to the U.S. From the Liberian Consul General saying that no one affiliated with the Garvey movement would be allowed to settle there. So it completely takes the wind out of Garvey's sails. Suspects as far as who undermined this endeavor is either WEB Dubois, because they had a pretty intense rivalry, and also Firestone Rubber Company, because they wanted Liberian lands to grow. I guess you grow rubber
Yeah, just rubber
to
trees.
grow rubber. Yeah,
Just think, I think you should think of
that's right.
fucking
It's
thing.
like orchards or something.
Yeah,
Is
it's
a group
a.
of tree an orchard? I don't know.
I don't
Anyways,
know, dude.
it's
I
not
don't
important.
trees. Come on, dog, from the
Come on,
streets
man.
out here, G. No, yeah, that W Du Bois. It's that even the Du Bois thing, and I really think a lot of shit goes back to this like slavery. If you want to talk about like the field, the people who work in the fields and the people who work in the house, kind of how they because Garvey being we talk about this in the books, colorism. Garvey's black and he's dark. He's dark. He's very dark skinned and very African features. Du Bois is more brown, lighter, more Europeanish kind of features, or and it kind of reflects they kind of play the distant poles in themselves between dark skin and light skin, more back to Africa integrationist. It's all there. It's all there. It's always about slavery. I'm never gonna stop telling that to you. All doing this podcast. It's about slavery. Mao about slavery.
Mao.
It's about slavery.
Early 1925, Garvey is rearrested in Harlem and sentenced to the Atlanta Penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
He suffers from chronic lung infections and bronchitis, and he's very worried about his organization because he's afraid that nobody's going to be able to step in fill his shoes, rather.
Yeah.
November of 1927, President Calvin Coolidge, bending to massive public pressure, orders the release of Garvey from prison so long as he is immediately deported. And this gets into the third and final phase of his life, which is exile. Late 1927 to early 1928, Marcus Garvey arrives back in Jamaica. He's living at Somali Court in Kingston. It's called by some people the Black House, which I thought was cool. And then he's trying to like rebuild UNIA from new headquarters. And he's not doing as well, I should say. May to June of 1928, he finalizes the purchase of the Royal Albert Hall, which is not as big as Liberty Hall in Harlem, and more importantly, not as full. He's performing to like scattered crowds, and he's used to like a full house, and now he's just got a couple faces in there, but he's still doing his thing. He's traveling around Canada, Europe, Central America, just still trying to do his work. 1930 to 1935, he campaigns for a seat in the Jamaican Legislative Council. He wins, and then I think there's like some minor bullshit that like invalidates it or gets him kicked out of that. It's also the birth of his first child, and he's like trying to open up other businesses under UNIA, but he's constantly dogged by the creditors and all the people that he owes money to, and so they all kind of like falter. And he tries to bring the international conference to him in Jamaica, but it also fails. And so then March 16th of 1935, Garvey sails to England. He goes back to the Speaker's Corner of Hyde Park, where he had visited so long ago. Like this is where one of the first places he went to when he first visited London. He gets back on the stump up there and is speaking and everything. And the papers start to speculate that maybe he's going to try to become an MP. And he would be like the first black MP that Minister of Parliament that England ever had.
It's the wait. I think the book kind of discusses like black people in England in like the 19 teens. I didn't even know that there were any black people in England in the 19 teens.
I didn't either.
Like a lot of like black people were on the sea. We love the sea. We're seafaring people. We love to get on a boat. I didn't know that. In the teens, we were like just Liverpool, Cardiff, Wyland. Every sea town had black people because they would just get on boats and just be like, I'm here now. I'm here now.
I'm doing it. I'm sorry. Spring and summer of 1936, the Ethiopian army collapses in the wake of the Italians, and then the man we talked about last episode, Haile Selassie, flees to England by way of Djibouti. And when he's arriving in England, there's like a throng of people there to greet him, not only press people, but just people who want his ear, and Garvey is one of them. He goes to greet him, but Selassie just blows past everybody, not just Garvey, but everybody, because he's kind of just, witnessed the collapse of his army.
Mm-hmm.
He's worried. He's got bigger things to worry about, right?
Yeah.
But Garvey takes it very personally that Selassie did not want to speak to
Yeah.
him, and so he starts like sniping at Selassie in the press because he's got a paper in London, I think, called The Black Man, that he starts like.
From my understanding, dog, he like had basically promoted Selassie to Haile Selassie as like would be the king of this new African empire that was all of these black people, all of scattered Ethiopia together, and which is and then the dude just like doesn't have anything to fucking say to him, and then that would piss you off too, dude. Like
it would
you
piss
like
me off, but also I don't know. I don't know enough about the circumstances around like what was going through Selassie's mind at the time.
also
I wouldn't want to speak to anybody if I was like
just lost my country.
fleeing the country.
Yeah.
If I was just virtually deposed and I just arrive at the country that I've fled to, I wouldn't want to speak to anybody. I'd be like,
also Selassie or Selassie or however you say Haile Selassie. I think there's like a. I'm not saying it right. He's real royalty. He's like old school royalty, like old world royalty. So he's like, I don't have to talk to anybody that I don't fucking. I don't know. I don't what.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
well,
like
he's king of kings.
He's the king of kings.
Who the fuck is anybody else?
And then also there's if he knew there's a fair amount of colorism going on in Ethiopia. So yeah, that's a whole different thing. Like,
so 1937, his wife, Amy Jacques, and his two children join him in England, and Garvey attends the UNIA conference in Toronto, says that the black race is going to quote unquote emancipate themselves from mental slavery at the conference, at the Toronto conference. Mm-hmm. Summer of 1938, Jacques heads back with their two children because the eldest fell sick and the doctor recommends more sunlight because modern medicine is not what it is today. Yeah. It's getting there though, and they're just like, you need a change of environment. You need more sunlight for your son. And so they go back to Jamaica, but Garvey's out of town. He's in Toronto for the next international conference. And he comes back to London and is informed of his family's whereabouts by his secretary, which kind of pisses him off. But also it's like, come on, man, your son was going to die if she didn't do this. So 1938 to 40, the membership of UNIA is dwindling. Yeah. Its finances are in disarray, and Garvey's just kind of relying on Amy Jacques' funds because he doesn't have much money for himself. Yeah. He wants to join his family back in Jamaica and is upset that Jacques left him alone. Yeah. He witnesses the dawn of World War II and falls into a depression. January of 1940, Marcus Garvey suffers a stroke and he lays low for a little bit. He's in bed and everything, but he ultimately recovers. It isn't until May 18th of 1940 that Daisy White, which is his secretary, I think maybe also his caretaker for a little bit, she opens the newspapers and sees an announcement that Marcus Garvey had died. Yeah. Even though he's still alive. Yeah. She's living with him for fuck's sake, and crazy. She's like trying to hide the newspapers from Marcus, but she can't do it ultimately. And so for a few weeks, Marcus Garvey is doomed to read his own obituaries of various attitudes. Like some are praising him and regaling him and telling people all about his accomplishments and everything that he did, and others are not so kind,
not so good. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fucking who does this? Like, bunch of celebrities do this every other month. We have rumors that certain people are dying, and it's just like, and I'm not gonna say their names just in case they do die, and then I'm now so like there's just like, oh, again, it's like and then it's like, no, I'm good, dog.
Man, this person's died 3 times now.
Keep starting these rumors about me. Is that Janice? Is that my daughter? She's trying to get me out of here. like
trying to bump me off so you can get that inheritance real quick.
Inheritance money, dog.
Until June 10th, 1940, so roughly 3 weeks after his reported death in the newspaper that Marcus finally dies alone, away from his family in England, and it's just sad.
Yeah, it was a life of definite high points. Of definite, it's an interesting person to look at, because I mean, it's a it's it's the zenith. His movement, the UNIA, UNIA, is definitely the zenith of a lot of like black thought, and like a continuation of stuff, but a definitely the zenith of a lot of these things that like dominated our societal. I don't know how to say this, but yeah, a lot of like organizations like sprung from it.
A lot of people are standing on his shoulders.
A lot of people, I would say so. Yeah, I would say like, you look at the like NOI, like fruit of Islam, Nation of Islam stuff. That's like a lot of that is like, it's a deep cut of Marcus Garvey stuff with Islam combined. So they just do both. Like it's and that if you like research like where that comes from, you can find some shit called, I think, Adimiya Islam, that comes from like Pakistan in the 20s, and that was like a thing that Marcus Garvey welcomed at his conferences. And that's where those things combined at Marcus Garvey's to then be promoted into the things that become the Nation of Islam. So
that's cool.
Yeah, like, and that's what you get.
Well, he's like one of the first guys to platform that movement.
He's the first guys to like platform, like not platform. I would say not platform. It was his movement, but then he brought in. He was welcoming to this kind of broader coalition, and of course, Black people identified with the Indian struggle for the. I think they were more Pakistan. I don't know. All the Muslims in India became Pakistan, but like they identify with their struggle for freedom. They get welcomed into, like, they can kind of move around in those kind of grand congresses or whatever, I forgot what they were called, and they're welcome. So then they start blending, and then you get the Fruit of Islam, Nation of Islam type stuff, and that gets you Farrakhan, Malcolm X, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
It's all like threads.
It's all threads right there. I mean, you can argue that ABB stuff, the kind of the a lot of the they lynch a Black person, we're gonna lynch a like that kind of more militant thought. Is like you see that all over. Defense kind of coalitions of like the ABB. Yeah, that's like the direct thing to like more the Black Panthers militant side, or militant thought. They didn't even have a militant side. The niggas just mainly cooked. did medical clinics, and then they were all murdered. Yeah, like I like there's a whole wing of, I think, Black ideology in this country that owes a lot to Marcus Garvey. And I think he was one of the first people who went around talking about like being Black is being as dark Black, like being African, it's good. And that's like something you didn't hear, and it's something important that needed to be said. And did he have problematic things to say? Oh yeah, oh yeah, problematic things to say. But yeah, it's fucking 1919, dude.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's like one of the most interesting things, because like they don't teach this shit, of course. And so I was hearing all this for like the first time, and I was like, holy fuck. Yeah. Like not only the race issues, but like reading about the Red Scare, for the first time, and like World War I, and sort of this unique experience, or this unique perspective, this lens of this facet of World War I that's not really studied, and just the movement at all. Like I had never heard about any of this. I'm like, okay.
No, it's a I would I had heard about it. I just want to say you leading the podcast. That's why I had to read the book also.
Yeah, that's why I was a little weirded out.
Like I was like, nah, this is exactly exactly what Marcus Garvey didn't want. You talk?
Why am I reading?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, so I
let's talk Garvey, everybody.
Let's talk Garvey, guys. No, I had to read also. So I read also, but yeah, no, I knew about Marcus Garvey, but I didn't know about Marcus Garvey. I didn't understand. I had an idea of what, but once it kind of we read about it, or we both read about it, it kind of came clear like, oh, this is the foundation of like. It was just I don't think it. I like. I honestly think the thing where he like fucked up was the business schemes. He just wasn't. They didn't have
Yeah.
business acumen.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have good
I
business
think
stuff.
he just needed to accept more help. I think.
Yeah, he should have. They should have. Yeah, they should have been. But also, the help that they got was kind of bullshit. Even Cockburn was like kind of a dick.
Cockburn was
It
doing
was a
some
little
shady shit
slimy
on the
dudes.
side and
Like
everything. Yeah.
all like the pilot the pilot guy that they got
Yeah.
was just a fucking like Bessie Coleman's running around here fucking a real pilot doing real shit. They got like a little slimy dude pilot. Like it's yeah. I mean, look, I Marcus Garvey's importance in American history, especially African American history, I think is underplayed because we also don't talk about a lot of these organizations, you know, on the side that from the tree that he sprouted. I almost described it as, I think I was thinking about it earlier the other day, as there are a bunch of roots of stuff that kind of informs this kind of more militant black ideology, or black nationalism, I think is what it's defined as. There's the roots of it, and then there's like a tree trunk, and that tree trunk is Marcus Garvey. And then like from all the branches and shit is like all the shit that kind of spawns from it. But yeah, it's a dope part of history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the dude went from being a nobody basically to becoming, I mean, if not imagined, it was, I mean, it's almost, if it's not real, wasn't real, but almost as real. He was the president of Africa. He was like,
he was the provisional president of the one term.
Yeah.
Only guy
to ever be the provisional president
president of Africa.
Like,
maybe not the only. Actually, I'm sure there might be another guy who was like, I'm doing it.
It wasn't real.
But the first.
It wasn't real. He wasn't really the president of Africa, but he was as close to being like the president, like really being the president of Africa, as anybody's gotten.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like,
well, he was like his deal was international. He was like, listen, it doesn't matter. It was like there's oppression everywhere. There's oppression on every continent. Oh, yeah, every continent.
Yeah.
And he spoke to that. He tapped into that. He was like, listen, we they're
scattered Ethiopia, dog. Yeah, scattered Ethiopia is what he called it. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't real. It was almost like it's a very interesting story. And it's a very interesting story. It's almost like the ideology is like lived on more than the organization. And depends on it's interesting. Well, all right, guys. All right, guys. That's been our episode of Hard Fight History for this week. Marcus Garvey, Hard Fight History forever. You know what I mean? We love you guys. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please follow us on all the little social media. Next week. I always get to this. Next week, what are we doing?
It is the end. Yeah. The end of Black History Month.
Black History must end it. So now
I know, but it's our end because we're transitioning. We got fucked over by the power grid.
Yeah.
And then the start of Women's History Month, where we will be looking at the life of Angela Davis.
It's gonna be a fun time, dude. It's gonna be a fun time. You know what I mean? Ready for it. Yeah,
I'm ready too. I got it ready. We could record it right now.
Okay, let's not do. We'll do that later. We'll do that later. We gotta end this podcast first. Thank you guys for listening. Please follow us on Hard Fight History at Instagram and Facebook. HFH Podcast on Twitter. Follow me at Joshua B. Stokes on Instagram and Twitter. That's Joshua Stokes on Facebook. Henry, where can they follow you at?
Find me Henry E. Price on Instagram. Just Henry Price on Facebook.
All right, man. You guys, now we love you. You guys be safe out there.
Wear your mask.
Wear your mask. I don't give a fuck what Greg Abbott says.
All right, come on,
you
man.
wear your god.
Stop trying to look cool. All right, you're not cool. You're a fucking dipshit. Let me tell you that.
Wear your goddamn mask.
From the bottom of my heart, you are a dipshit.
You son of a bitch.
If you don't wear your fucking mask.
Wear your mask, dude. Wear your mask.
Wear your shit.
You crazy person.
You dipshit.
You wear your okay. All right. We'll see you guys next time. All right. Peace.